Have you got a teenager in the household looking for a summer job? It could be their first job, either part-time, perhaps full-time. It's a crucial opportunity to set in place some healthy financial habits. So how do you make the most of it? Financial planner Phil McGann is here to discuss this further. Phil, just quickly, what was your first job?
My first job, I was actually working on a milk run in country New South Wales. Worked for 2 hours, twice a week. I got paid $5 an afternoon.
In cash?
In cash.
In cash.
And that was a lot of money. I thought, this is great. I've done well.
Did you put it in the bank or in a box under the bed?
I spent it on different things. Did you do?
Didn't last long.
No.
All right. If we know that, and we've heard this afternoon, how things have changed from a day when you were probably given cash in an envelope or a cheque to what would you be paid? How would you be paid?
It's all electronic for the most part these days. I mean, there might be some businesses that deal a little bit in cash, but for the most part, people will be getting paid because they may be working, teenagers be working for big companies, big grocery stores or hamburger joints or whatever it may be. So they tend to get paid electronically, so that'll go into a bank account, and then you need to do something with those funds.
Okay, so you need to have a bank account set up first off.
Yep.
And you need to know what to do with the money once it lands in the account. So let's take a look at some of the steps that you might be able to take with your teenager or young person to set up some healthy habits from the beginning.
Indeed. I mean, it really comes down to the basics of needs and wants. Obviously, children will get money and they'll say, wonderful, I want to go and buy that thing or those treats or whatever it may be. But as a parent, what you're trying to do is actually instill in them good habits for the future to actually allow them to enter adulthood in a better state on the financial savvy side. And that may be as easy as when the money goes into the bank account. A lot of accounts these days will let you do sub-accounts. So you may well say, right, for your child, let's sort of set this up and work through with them. Why don't we have a couple of sub-accounts under your main account? That's for that long-term goal that you have, that you want to save up for X. Mm-hmm. And this is for some more short-term things that you want to spend on out with your mates on the weekend or whatever. Those sorts of things. And that gives your child some real goalposts of what they're trying to achieve and how earning money is important, but actually spending it is probably more important, and how you actually do that with them. And that's a really good thing that you can instill in them as they go forward.
I suppose, too, the benefit now of things being online is that you can pull up on your smartphone or your desktop a picture of your financial position fairly easily. You don't have to go to a bank and ask a teller to
No.
So you could kind of see pretty quickly after the space of a couple of months how your money was working for you or not working for you.
No, exactly. And saying, well, what are you spending all that money down there on the shops every Friday afternoon with your mates? So, and that's a really good life lesson for your children, because the big thing about children, teenagers having jobs, it's not about the money. It's about the other things that come with the job,
right.
I feel. And really it's a case of if you actually have a job when you're 14, 15, 16, you learn things, not just the money. It's basically learning to take direction, learning to be part of a team, learning to turn up on time, learning to wear a uniform if that's part of the job. And if you don't do those and you get out of university and your first job when you're 22 and you haven't done that, well, you're really at a disadvantage for all the people who have done it when they were younger, I think.
5 minutes to 3, you're on ABC Radio Brisbane and Queensland. Phil McGann from Claritude Financial Planning, taking a look at helping a young person start down the path of employment or earning because they might be self-employed.
They may be, yeah, and that's a really good thing as well. That I do know a lot of a few younger people in families that I know that do a bit of tutoring, things like that. Now that's self-employed, and some of the children I know say, "Look, what do you do for a living?" Well, I'm part-time, I'm self-employed. Now that's a really positive sort of attitude to have as you go into life.
Isn't it? But there are some things that you need to keep in mind. First off, minimum age for teenagers to legally work, restrictions on hours, breaks, etc. So take us through some of the basics you need to
Some of those things, and I had a look on the Fair Work website just to get a general idea of this. And generally speaking in Queensland, children, it's usually about 13 that you can get a job. Some occupations, delivering pamphlets and things like that might be a little bit lower. But for most people, they'll get jobs when they're 14, 15, 16. And they'll work for the big hamburger joints or the big grocery chains and those sorts of things. There is actually limitations on how long you can work if you're a child. and it's basically on a school day, maximum 4 hours. I can't work them longer than that. If it's on the weekend, it's longer. If it's not in a school, it's not in a school term, it can actually be longer over the holidays. So that's just sensible and something the government has put in place so children don't, their main focus should be school, not work, but it does give them an opportunity to get some of this good experience as well.
And how about how much a child could earn, teenager could earn? What's the wage?
It's all based on effectively a percentage of the full-time adult wage. Right? Now, the idea behind that is if you've got the national minimum wage in Australia at the moment is $23 an hour. Right? And a child obviously should get a percentage of that. A 14 or 15-year-old, I think they're very clever, but they're not as competent, let's say, as a fully grown adult.
Try telling them that.
Yeah, exactly. So they should get a percentage of that. Now, some of the wages out there are pretty low for a 15, 16, 17-year-old, but if they're on a casual rate, they'll actually get an uplift on that as well. So expect a 16-year-old, I looked at the figures, it may be something around the $13 to $14 an hour. So it's not the king's ransom, but it's not too bad for someone who doesn't know too much about everything. But and if they do enough hours, well, they're actually making a reasonable sort of income on that side as well, because they have no expenses themselves. So they've really just got money that will accumulate for them.
Now, that's a critical point, isn't it? Because we have heard this afternoon about what it was like, and maybe you got your pay packet and outlined on the front of the pay packet were some of the deductions for tax. We'll get to tax and super in a sec. But also the deductions for like boarding and accommodation if you were a young working nurse, for example. Yeah. Is it a good idea perhaps for parents to, as part of the conversation, setting the child up for for future success, sort of say, look, I'm not charging you, I mean, maybe you are, but with this pay in the future, you're going to have to fund things like water, all the water that you're using in those showers.
Yes. It gives them a real life lesson in what things cost. And if you actually do maybe charge them a bit of board, but that's obviously a personal choice for every individual. But I have heard of clients who will actually charge their child some board, but then they'll accumulate it for them and then give it back to them later on. Now, that may be a case of not telling them that they're going to give it back to them, but when they get to be 18 or 19, or if they're going out into their first accommodation, actually, mum gives them the money back that they've actually been accumulating themselves.
Now, tax and super for teenagers.
Well, the tax scenario, teenagers are not going to earn, generally speaking, they'll be earning under the tax-free threshold, which is $18,200. So they shouldn't be paying any tax unless you're doing lots and lots of work. On the superannuation side, a lot of people don't realise this, but under current legislation, if you are under 18 and you work less than 30 hours a week, which is the vast bulk of children we're talking about, your employer is not obliged to pay any superannuation for you. It's only when you get over that 30-hour week. Now, the idea behind that was when superannuation came out 30 years ago, if you put money into a child's super fund, it'd get eaten up by all the fees. That's changed, but the legislation is still the same.
Interesting.
The government is indicated they're going to change that. So if your child is not getting super, don't worry. Mm-hmm. It's a legitimate thing. Your employer, they may want to do it, but they don't have to do it.
Phil McGann, lots to think about, some really handy hints there. Thank you so much for your time.
No dramas. Thank you.